The difference between good and elite recruiters isn't how much time you spend, it's knowing what actually works. After testing thousands of recruits across multiple dynasties, I discovered 5 hidden mechanisms that completely change how recruiting works in CFB 26. In this video, I'll break down each one and show you how to use them to build a powerhouse program. Alright, so let's start where every dynasty begins, with your coach. I hear people ask all the time when creating a custom coach, does your coach's pipeline matter? Well, the answer is yes, but only if you get a specific coaching upgrade down the road. That upgrade is called Strong Roots, and it's within the Program Builder archetype. Strong Roots Tier 1, for example, gives a 1-tier boost to your primary pipeline. So if our school has a Tier 4 pipeline for Metro Atlanta, and we set our coach's pipeline to Metro Atlanta, then unlocking this upgrade will bump it up to Tier 5. The smart move is to choose a pipeline your school already has a natural pipeline in, like Tier 3 or Tier 4, because with the Strong Roots upgrade, you can push that up a whole tier. That set pipeline also impacts future job offers. So if you pick, say, Southern California, you'll start seeing offers from schools that also recruit that region, such as USC, San Diego State, Fresno State, etc. Whether you plan on moving around in your dynasty or building on one of your program's pre-existing pipelines, here are what I believe are the 5 strongest pipelines that produce some of the best players. Now, this is in no particular order, but East Texas, Northern California, North Texas, Central Florida, and Metro Atlanta. Those are all strong pipelines. Another thing to think about is pipeline competition. It's worth considering pursuing pipelines that don't have a lot of competition. Wisconsin, for example, always seems to produce really good 4- and 5-star offensive and defensive linemen, and there really isn't strong pipeline competition in that region. The Badgers have a Tier 4 pipeline in Wisconsin, and compare that to the next closest, which are only 2 schools in Tier 2, Illinois and Northern Illinois. 2 schools I'm not necessarily worried about when it comes to recruiting. Compare that to a pipeline like Tidewater, where there are 5 Tier 5 schools, including Alabama, Clemson, and Penn State, and 11 Tier 3 and 4 programs, including Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame. It's just something to keep an eye on. So once your coach is set and your pipeline's locked in, the next question is how much time do you actually have to recruit? Because no matter how good your setup is, your program's prestige rating decides how many hours you can actually spend each week. Here's the breakdown. And here's the part most people miss. You always get around 20 to 25% more hours during preseason than you do in season. That means your initial board setup might actually be the most important part of your entire recruiting year. If you're rebuilding a smaller school, you can't spread those hours across 20 prospects. You just don't have the hours. You gotta focus on realistic targets early and grow your board later once you get some of those hours freed up once people commit. If you're running a top-tier program, you have more flexibility. But even then, your hours disappear fast if you're not intentional. The key is putting those early hours where they'll get the biggest return. And the best way to do that is to understand which players are actually worth scouting in the first place. Which brings us to tip number 3. And this is where most players completely miss the mark because scouting isn't just about ratings, it's about potential. When you scout a prospect, you're not just uncovering their speed or their awareness, you're also getting the chance to reveal whether they're a gem or a bust. And that one label can tell you more about their future than any other single rating ever will. Here's what those mean. A gem has 0 chance of being a normal development trait, and a bust has 0 chance of being an elite development trait. And we know that dev trait is one of the biggest indicators of how well a player will develop throughout their career. So when you get that reveal, you're learning exactly how their potential compares to the expectations of their star rating. And this is where the data really gets interesting. After analyzing more than 2,000 recruits across every position and archetype, here's what we found. A 3-star gem has a 17% chance of being elite, a 4-star gem jumps to around 50%, and a 5-star gem nearly 75% chance of elite. On the other hand, 3-star busts have virtually no upside, only about 1 to 2% are a star dev trait. Meanwhile, only about 16% of 4-star busts have a star dev trait, and only about 38% of 5-star busts. Okay, I get it, that's a lot of data. So how do you use this? Well, if you're a lower prestige program, you should go heavy on scouting during preseason, because that's your only realistic window to uncover hidden gems and avoid wasting hours on low ceiling players. And for rebuilds, you're only gonna really want to scout 3 stars. Because if you are able to land 4 or 5 stars, you're not going to really want to be concerned about what their gem or bust indicator are, because 4 or 5 stars will help your program regardless. If you're a top program, you can afford to scout during the regular season, but you need to be selective. Make sure your scouting hours are never taking the place of your recruiting hours and trying to get the best prospects possible. Once you know which players you can truly develop, the next step is figuring out who will even consider your school in the first place, and that's where dealbreakers come in. You see, every recruit has motivations, but when one of those shows up as a deal breaker, it means your program needs to meet a minimum grade in that category before they'll even consider you. And here's the thing, the minimum grade changes based on the recruit's star rating. Here's how it works. 5-star recruits won't consider you unless you're at least a B in their deal breaker category, 4 stars need you at C+ or higher, and 3 stars will settle for C-. If you don't meet that grade, nothing else matters because they'll lock you out. There is one exception though, the lower the bar perk in the strategist tier 3 tree. That upgrade drops these deal breaker requirements, which can open the door to recruits you normally wouldn't have access to. But without that perk, you need to be smart about who goes on your board. Okay, so now that you know which players will actually consider you, let's close things out with something most players get wrong. Did you know that a recruit does not need a full influence bar to commit to your program? In CFB 26, prospects sign with whichever school has the most influence on National Signing Day, not the school with the completely maxed out bar. And here's a bonus that most people miss. If you don't land a player by signing day, if none of the schools above you give that player a scholarship, they can still join your team during Encouraged Transfers Week. It's one of the easiest ways to quickly fill out your class, especially if you're a rebuilding program trying to add depth late. So don't obsess over maxing out every influence bar. Recruiting is about staying ahead, not hitting 100%. If you want more tips like this, we just dropped our in-depth recruiting guide. Over 20 pages of strategies just like the ones I shared with you today. Join our premium Patreon membership to get the guide and other exclusive Dynasty content that gives you a real edge. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments, have you discovered any hidden recruiting tricks like the ones I shared with you today? Let me know in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.